Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Equestrian Adventuresses podcast. We are your passport for the European show jumping world. I am your host, Coach Crystal Kelly, and I'm super excited to get to kind of paint this picture for you guys today because just last weekend, actually for a couple of days, I was there not just for one day, but I was there for several days. I was actually at the Mediterranean Equestrian Tour. I was scoping out the facilities and checking it out because I am actually myself submitting my own entry fees for my mare. So she's 5 and she has her FEI passport. This is going to be her very first FEI competition. She's never done an FEI show before. So this is going to be like a whole lot of fun. I've never competed in Spain before and I've never owned my own horses. I've only ever competed on other people's horses. And, so I'm super excited also for my own goals to get back into the show jumping scene and also for my mare, who, as I said, she's going to be competing in these FEI classes. So I wanted to kind of describe for you a little bit some observations that I saw when I was at the competition because, I grew up in California. Right. I grew up in California and in California and in the US, I was competing in the US and I've competed in quite a few different countries. I've done show jumping in India. For example, I went to competitions there. I did some competitions in Romania, which I know is, part of Europe, but it's a little bit secluded. So it was a little bit, let's say, different than the rest of Europe. Okay. This was from my Romanian friends, obviously, who are really telling me this. But yeah, so, I've kind of had the opportunity of being in some, let's say, remote countries or some different countries and getting to see like how the competition world varies from around the world and especially from where I grew up in California and in America. And so today, I thought it would be really fun if I just kind of walked you through and painted this picture for you guys of some key differences that I observed and witnessed just by hanging around at the Mediterranean Equestrian Tour here in Spain, last week, as I said, for several days. And the reason that this is so important is because I feel like when I was growing up in America, I can say this now, but at the time I didn't realize it. I was living in a bubble. Right? I was living in a bubble. It was usually the same people at the competitions, not just from my barn, but from other barns in the area. It was a local competition that I was doing. So it was usually the same riders riding similar horses, jumping similar levels. The courses were similar. Like everything was very same. And although it was really exciting when I was competing in the US, at the time, like I didn't know what I didn't know. You know, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and it wasn't until really I left my bubble. Okay, I had been living in this bubble. It was a little bit like The Truman Show, okay, with Jim Carrey. Have you guys seen that movie? If you're joining me in the live stream or on the YouTube or something, I want you to comment Truman Show. The thing about that movie is he was living in a bubble and they were able to kind of manipulate him and he didn't even realize that he was in this bubble until obviously towards the end of the movie. But that he didn't even realize that he was in this bubble and that the world was kind of keeping him in this bubble. And I kind of felt the same growing up in California, although I had traveled a lot as a kid. I mean, I didn't know how many kids my age had been to as many different states as I'd been. I'd gone to 13 different schools growing up, so I thought I was very very well traveled for an American. But one thing about America is it doesn't matter, East Coast, West Coast, somewhere in the middle, it's all America at the end of the day. And so I was living in this bubble. And when I left, I really realized, like, whoa, I was in a bubble, right? Whoa, I was in a bubble. So I want to share for you guys today, you know, my experience checking out these competitions, as I said, here in Spain. These are FEI competitions I am talking about. So a little bit is going to be, obviously the difference between competing at a local national level competition versus an FEI level competition for sure. But some of it is also going to be very specific to Europe. Okay. Like this is stuff that you see in Europe, but you don't really see anywhere else. Okay. And that's what I really wanted to share for you guys today. So when I sorry, my English sometimes, you guys, is really not that good. When I arrived at Oliva, the first thing, obviously, you park your car and you see, you know, a lot of very big horse trucks. In the US, you have like big horse trailers with like six horses that can go in the back. Here we have horse trucks, so they're basically like semi trucks that can fit six horses, but they also have like if you can imagine an RV, it has like a kitchen and it has a flat screen TV and queen size bed and all this stuff. So there's a lot of horse trucks, and the horse stabling area is kind of separated, and then you park your car in the public parking area, as I did, and of course, you see all of these flashy cars, right? That's the first thing you see. The Audis, the BMW, sure, but also let's say the fancier cars. Okay, the fancier cars. All number plates from different countries, because in Europe, you can see which country the car is from based on the number plate. So you can walk in the parking lot and you can see like, oh, this car's from France and this car's from Belgium and this one's from the Netherlands. It's a really cool thing about Europe that you can just walk around and see all these different nationalities all in one parking lot. And so you can walk around and you can see that this is a super international event. And that's just the parking lot. Okay. And then you enter inside the actual show grounds. And of course, you have the flag posts everywhere with all of the different nationalities of the different countries of people that have competed at this competition and at this venue. Now, this particular venue does have multiple show jumping arenas. So actually, when I was there, they had 3 different competitions all happening at the same time. There was a 1 meter 40 class happening in one arena. There was, I think, the 135 and then the 130 that I was kind of watching. And then later in the day was the meter 15s, which is the more 5-year-old horses, which is what I'm planning on entering my mare's Zafira in. And, throughout the day, they just had like different levels of competitions. The smallest classes at this particular competition is a meter 10 because it is an FEI competition. At a local competition, you can find, courses as small as 1 meter, but you're not going to find anything smaller than that unless, I really can't imagine that you would find that. Okay, not at a national, maybe some local schooling show for children or something. But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be in the more 1 meter range. But at this particular competition, a meter 10 was the absolute bare minimum. Okay, so if you aren't jumping 110, you can't even go to this show. Okay, that's one. The other thing is, as I said, this was an FEI competition, so I was checking out the whole schedule for the whole day. Everyone that morning, I was not able to get there in time to be able to witness this because obviously, I didn't really need to, and I had a bit of a drive in order to get to this venue. But everyone in the morning, because it is an FEI competition, they had to bring their horses for the inspections, for the FEI people to actually kind of vet check the horses and check everything, check the paperwork, the FEI passports, all this good stuff. So they did that early in the morning. And then they also had a couple of training classes. These training classes, I've noticed they start just before the actual class. So some of the riders, instead of entering in the actual FEI competition, they choose to do some of these training classes. Oops, sorry, my phone is beeping. They choose to do some of these training classes with especially the young horses. That way they can kind of move the horse around the course and show them the arenas and show them all these exciting, scary things that are happening, colorful jumps. These jumps were crazy, by the way. There was a lot of them, especially in obviously the Grand Prix classes, but there was quite a lot of super colorful, super bright jumps. In the baby horse classes and the baby arena, they were a bit less colorful, but there was definitely some, really colorful jumps, and there was definitely some more interesting looking fences. I'm definitely going to be very curious, how Zafira reacts to some of these fences. But yeah, so there was a lot of just really beautiful fences. There was a guitar in the Grand Prix one, which I thought was like super cool, and some colored pencils and like all kinds of really funny, cool things. And then, of course, in all of the arenas, because this is a big professional venue, they also have like, let's say, little decorations of, palm trees. And in one of the bigger arenas, they do have like a small built in like Liverpool or water area. So there is a lot of just unique, colorful things that the horses are going to have to get used to. So the horses that are coming to this competition, as I said, even if they're 5 years old, the minimum height that Zafira is going to have to be able to jump in order to do these FEI competitions is a meter 15, right? That's the smallest. It's so funny. I said a meter 10 is the smallest, but the 1 meter 10 is not for the baby horses. The 1 meter 10 is for like, the riders who just want to do 110, but they have at least minimum 6 years old horses because these are the CSI 1-star classes. So Zafira technically has to jump bigger than some of these horses, which are older than her and maybe more experienced than her. She has to actually jump bigger than them, which is quite entertaining. So, she was jumping, she has to jump in the 115s, as I said, is the 5-year-old classes. The other thing is, and I want to talk more about the warm up arena than I want to talk about the main event, because I feel like the main event, you guys can live stream these competitions. I'm sure a lot of you are watching the Longines, every other week, just like I am. I'm watching Longines all the time. Like, this is my favorite thing to watch. And so, if you're that person, you can find so many awesome show jumping related videos on YouTube or wherever, where they're actually in the main arena and they're jumping their course. So what I really want to talk about is actually more behind the scenes, yeah, a little bit more, and let's say the warm up arena. So one of the things that I definitely noticed is, first of all, there's no like coaches in the arena really. Like, these riders, even if they're amateur level, they get on their horses, they warm them up, they pop over the jumps, and then they get on with the course. Okay, there's no one in there that doesn't know what they're doing really. Like, these people, they're actively going to these competitions very regularly. There's a lot of professionals that are there training their young baby horses. So, I saw, for example, Oliver Philipparts. Like, he was there schooling a young horse around, and I think he was in the 140 class, but, he might have some youngsters in the young classes. So you might actually be competing against. We also saw, my husband and I, we were there on the weekend together. We saw Ben Mayer. We saw Ben Mayer jumping. So, it's one of the rare sports where you can actually compete against these high level professionals, even though you're on a baby horse, or maybe it's your very first competition ever. Okay. So even if you're an amateur, if you're at these FEI competitions, like, everyone's competing in the same class. Okay. And so one of the things that I noticed was in the warm up arena, as I said, there's no coaching, there's no kind of faffing around. Okay. They just kind of get on their horses, they know what they're doing, they warm them up, and then they go into the arena. The other thing, though, that I really want to point out is, the quality. The quality to the quality. Does that mean that I agree with everyone in the warm-up arena? Absolutely not. No, I did see some people, unfortunately, the FEI, they are allowing, like, draw reins and things like that. So you definitely see a few riders that are cruising around with some draw reins in the warm-up, or, stuff like that. A lot of them have spurs. The baby horses, most of them have martingales and all these different things, just because, the horses might need, like, a little bit of help with that. Which is totally fine, that's fair enough. But yeah, the draw reins and things, like, these are things that, I don't really agree with. So you do unfortunately see a few of those riders kind of cruising around. But for the most part, what you actually see instead is a lot of riders that really know what they're doing. Okay, really know what they're doing, in the sense of, these horses are extremely fit. These horses all are extremely well bred horses. Even though this was the 5-year-old class, for example, these horses have a lot of jump in them. Okay, it's very obvious that these horses have a lot of jump in them. For some of these horses, 115 is kind of a joke. Okay, it's one thing obviously in the warm up, it's another thing in a course. So it definitely didn't always come together in the course. That's where you usually saw a lot of mistakes happening, or the horses would get excited, or they would start to rush, or, the riders would kind of lose a bit of control here or there, and then the fences would come down. So in the course, it was much easier to see, when the horses were a bit more inexperienced or a little bit greener. But again, I'm talking more about the warm up. So in the warm up, as I said, it's very obvious that these horses are extremely fit. These riders are basically living on these horses' backs. They usually have multiple horses at the competitions, these riders, in all different levels. And you are competing against, people with a lot of money, people with fabulous horses, and they all have fabulous horses. The cool thing about these competitions, here in Europe, especially because they're FEI competitions, as I'm, downloading the app on my phone, I can check out every single horse and rider combination. I can see this rider owns this horse. This rider, or this horse, is owned by that one. I can see, this horse sire, who the sire of that horse was, who the dam is of that horse. And almost every horse has, somebody famous in their bloodlines, right? I'm looking at all these horses, and I'm like, if I'm just looking at the bloodlines alone, I'm not going to know who's going to win. Right, because they all sound fabulous. Okay, they all sound fabulous. In the warm-up arena, they all got jump. Okay, they all got some jump in them. So, it's really down to, everyone here has money. Everyone here has very nice horses. Everyone here is pretty much at the same level in that sense. I feel like in the US, it was a bit more of a mix. It was a bit more of a mix. I personally, I used to compete on thoroughbreds because that's what I had access to. I didn't have my own horse growing up. I didn't have warm bloods at that time. I don't think I had ever ridden a warm blood until I moved to Europe, to be fair, until I was 21 years old. Or I had, but not very much. Okay, I didn't have like a whole lot of experience with warm bloods, if I'm honest. Um, Obviously that changed, when I left and I started, pursuing show jumping more professionally. Now it's only warm bloods that I ride. But yeah, in the US it was a little bit more of a mix, right? People were at different levels, different horses. Some horses were imported, some horses were thoroughbred, some horses were quarter horses, some horses were this. Um, People are jumping at the 2'3" level, 2'6" level, then 3-foot level. And, they kind of got all these classes in between before they even get to the 1 meter class. Okay. The 3'3" class. So, they have, a whole lot of other things that they are kind of working on before they even get to the big jumps. Right. Or if they ever get to the big jumps. And so, yeah, it's just kind of a whole different level here. Okay. It's a whole different level here. As I said, these horses have the bloodlines, the breeding, they have the money behind them, the training behind them. The riders have the training behind them, the money behind them, and everyone just looks really fabulous, right? A lot of them, they look pretty fabulous. So, minus these few riders that are cruising around in draw reins. But yeah, other than that, a lot of them, they do really look very nice in the warm up ring. Okay, again, a lot of times things fell apart a little bit more in the course. Okay, that's a different conversation. That's more of a training related thing, which, obviously I get into a lot with those who do my coaching programs. But yeah, I hope that this was interesting for you guys, just because I wanted to paint a little bit of a behind the scenes picture of what you can expect and what things look like here, because it is different. It's a different world. If you think that you're going to buy this $3 horse and then rock up to the show and beat the horse that has the breeding and the caliber and the facilities and the training and the coaching and the money and the LED therapy and the this and the that and the supplements and blah, like, it's going to be very hard for you. Okay, it's going to be very hard for you. Not because you can't, or it's not possible, but if you guys have ever seen that movie, He's Just Not That Into You, and there's this scene where the girl, she kind of finally realizes, like, she was sort of making all these excuses for why the men wouldn't call her. So she'd go on a date and she'd have so much fun, and then she'd go home and she'd like sit by the phone and she'd wonder and wonder, like, why isn't he calling me? Why isn't he calling me? We had such a fun time. Why isn't he calling me? And so she would make all these excuses, like, oh, maybe he's in the hospital and he's unconscious and that's why he's not calling me. Maybe it's because, he had to go out of town on business and he doesn't have phone signal. Maybe that's why he's not calling. So she would come up with all these crazy excuses. And in the end, the solution was, hey, he's just not that into you. Right? He's just not that into you. That's why he's not calling you. And for, I think, a lot of equestrians who want to get into the sport of show jumping, what they fail to realize is, yes, there are some exceptions for sure, but for the most part, you have to follow the rule. Okay. And the rule is, if he's not calling, he's just not that into you. So the rule with show jumping is, if you don't have the type of dedication and commitment to commit to a training plan, to commit to making your horse super fit, to you being super fit, like, you have to train like an athlete if you want to be an athlete. Okay. So you have to focus on your fitness. If you're not willing to, spend the money on your horse getting the best supplements and the best nutrition, and you're just kind of feeding them some really cheapy, awful stuff, which makes them feel tired and weak and they don't really build the correct muscle, all of these things, they play a factor. Whether you like it or not, again, this whole he's just not that into you. Like, it's the rule. Okay, it's the rule, not the exception. And so you have to, when you're competing against every single rider, there's 50 horses in these classes, by the way. It's not like 5 or 6, right? Like, there's 50 horses you're competing against. And basically all of them are jumping clear, with the exception of like 5. Okay, so the majority of them are going clear and only a few of them aren't. So you have to really commit to the process. You have to really commit to having a training plan. You have to commit to your training. You have to commit to your fitness. You have to commit to the fact that you are an athlete just as your horse is an athlete. You have to commit to spending the money, being away at the competitions, traveling to these competitions, finding a coach like me that can actually help get you there and give you the kind of training that you need in order to make it to that level. So you have to have a lot of commitment and dedication time commitment, money commitment, energy commitment. Okay. It's not just about rocking up to the competition and fingers crossed, hoping that things go well because, like, that works in Hollywood, but that doesn't really work in real life. Okay, so that's really why I wanted to paint the picture for you guys today. I hope you really enjoyed today's podcast episode. And thank you so much for joining me. If you guys have enjoyed this podcast, I would love it if you can share it with your friends, like the video if you're on YouTube, or, leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you so much for joining me. I am your host, Coach Crystal Kelly. Bye, everyone. Bye.